hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Andrew Patterson here, host of the Academy podcast, Just Don't Do It. I'm excited to bring you guests who are experts in their respective areas. They're going to go through the things that they stopped doing in order to increase their business. So sit back, relax, and stop doing.
Hey everybody, I am here with Neal Snyder, a guy that I met at, an event at John Muljo's. And he blew my mind, and ever since I've wanted to know more about this guy. So what I wanted to do, Neal, is have you introduce yourself, kind of give a background of what you do, where you came from, and do your thing, my man.
Andrew, quick question: is this a video or audio podcast?
This is actually a video.
All right, so let me just look pretty good.
Dang!
You're seeing the back of my kitchen.
What a stud!
Actually, if I would have known it was a video, I would have gone on my fake office where I got the picture of the the map in the background with the Encyclopedia Britannicas, to make me look smart.
Well, what do you think? I actually have stuff written on that board behind me. That's just scribble. I need people to think that I actually write stuff on the whiteboard.
Well, hey man, thanks so much for inviting me on this podcast. And what's the official name of the podcast?
It is the Academy Podcast. Just Don't Do It. The official name.
Don't do it. It's it's like the opposite of Nike.
Yeah. Opposite of Nike, but we can't actually say that. I don't want them to think that I stole anything from them.
Yeah, you might have to edit that part out.
Yeah. But so go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, cool. So, hey, I graduated college with a degree in engineering. And I'm going to tell you, pretty frank, sitting at a desk for 12, 14 hours a day kind of sucked. So I had an opportunity in the, pretty much mid-2000s to take some time off from engineering. And at that point, I was going to the gym a lot. And the gym manager there was, recognized that I like to help people, like other people while they were working out, that people would ask me questions because I kind of looked like I knew what I was doing. That's a whole nother story. But so I wasn't working at the time. And then about 2007, the manager asked, hey, we're looking for a personal trainer. Do you want to do it? You want to apply? I said, sure. And I got a weekend certification at that point. I drove down to Maryland, got a weekend certification, and I was a personal trainer in 2007. 2007 to 2009, I worked at two separate gyms in New York City, and then which are not really notable. First gym told me exactly how not to run a gym, so that was very informative. The second gym taught me how not to be a manager. That was very knowledgeable. And then in 2009, I applied for a job at Equinox Fitness in New York City, and I just loved that place. I loved it so much. I applied to be a fitness manager in 2010. The fitness manager is in charge of the education for the trainers. And then I did that for 2 years. And then in 2012, I applied to be a personal training manager. And a personal training manager is in charge of the entire department business, as well as the other fitness manager. And I did that from 2012 to 2015. And then from 2015 to 2016, I managed, they have this sort of elite group of trainers. In you call them master trainers, but they're called Tier X. And that was just 8 guys and girls that were, we're looking at 20 years experience apiece. So mega brainiacs and this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I had a kid and that changes your life. And at that point I was commuting 5 hours round trip to New York City because I live in central Jersey. So just out of the blue, sort of a friend of the family contacted me and was looking for personal trainers. And he was 30 minutes away from my house. So I accepted that position, and it's a very small boutique club. And so now I'm just part of a 3-4 person team, and it's really cool, and it gives me a lot more time with my family.
That's great, man. That's great. Yeah, I bet. You went from so many different jumps, which is insane. Going from your first job to all of a sudden going to just personal training. It's like you went from the top to the bottom, back to the top. And
Yeah.
I would say that's pretty much what a career looks like. People think it's just this, when in reality it's what.
Oh no, man, it's a zigzag all over the place. And then you mentioned John's thing, John Moljo.
Yep.
2 years ago, him and I are partners. We do
Mhm.
run an education company for trainers, and it's called L.A.B Fitness Consultants. Yeah. So when you mentioned John, it's more of like a 50-50 thing. Don't forget about me.
Yeah. I forgot, man. That's my bad. And it definitely, and at the end of this, I definitely want you to tell people about it, the event that is coming up. That way people know about it. Cause I was at that event last year, and it definitely spoke to me, especially with all the presenters, and they gave real life examples, not just these fake examples or these fantasy examples. They were real life examples of something that you could take home and apply right away. So I'll have Neal at the end of this kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Do you remember how, this was at his gym, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you remember how I started off with a couple Facebook ads where it was like get 300 new clients this month, or 800 leads, and how that's all BS. And
Yes.
the people in front of you have been doing this, combined like 75 years, 80 years in the industry. So like the stuff we do with real people, not, imaginary internet people.
Yeah.
So the stuff we do is real. We make big mistakes. We make big wins. So.
Yeah, it's incredible. But yeah, I definitely want to dive into that so people understand what that event's all about. So what I want to do with my main man, my guest Neal, is to go through some of the things. We're going to go through two things that he stopped doing in order to increase his success. And it can either be as a trainer, it could be in business. And then on the third one, we'll talk about what he stopped doing in order to, increase his time with his family, and especially having a new kid. So Neal, let's talk about the first point. What was one big thing, and you could choose business or training, that you stopped doing in order to increase your success in that area?
It's a good question, Andrew. So as a manager at Equinox, they ran some kind of like I don't want to say psychological profile, but because I still got a job there. No, but some sort of like I guess some sort of profile where it says like where your strength and weaknesses is. It was called a zero risk,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like 80 questions, some weird questions about how you make decisions, and I guess like your values and things like that. But when it came back, they basically told me that I'd be a good candidate for manager. So that was, thumbs up. But I tend to see things like I tend to see the entire spectrum of things. So like when I look at a business, I see every single thing that goes on, like every single metric, every single trainer. I tend to look at the big picture, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is you get overwhelmed very quickly. And you get very anxious about it, and then you get like paralysis by analysis.
Just thinking that, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I guess I had to. The question was, what did I remove?
Mm-hmm.
So so I had you basically have to sit down and look at everything, and then you got to remove pretty much everything except the 1, 2, or 3 things that will benefit your business the most. And then that's pretty much I'm gonna tell you what I used to focus on over there. That's pretty much what I would do, and then from there I would look at that every single day almost, and then from there I would go into the sort of the medium or bigger picture things. For like example, if you were you're managing personal trainers, you have to worry about how many clients they have. Are their programs up to date? Their assessments. What's their closing ratio? Your closing percentage. What are they in uniform today? Do they have their name tag? Are they late? Are they showing up on time? Are there any clients going on vacations? Like, just a million things you got to worry about as the manager of the business. And it's kind of embarrassing because they kind of teach you this right up front, but then you kind of go in your own way and then come back. But pretty much when you do manage personal trainers for a business, the 2 things that I look at is how many clients the trainer has, and then how many times per month those clients are coming in. And then if I look at that every day over a daily, weekly, and monthly, I can pretty much pinpoint where you're very strong at, things you're very strong at, and then things that are very challenging for you. Just by looking at those two numbers.
So based on that, I'm going to ask you a question. So, from stemming from what you said, I mean, that's awesome how you break it down, because then you're able to get all the information that you need out of that. So is it like one of those things that, say the trainer has a lot of clients come in, but that maybe they don't redeem that many sessions? Is it one of those things that maybe he's a good salesman, but he or she isn't that great of a people person to be able to have them wanting to come back, or maybe they're not getting the results quickly enough? What would be your analysis there?
So you're saying somebody has like a lot of clients?
Yep. But you see they don't redeem as many, maybe after the first 2 sessions, you see them not coming in as much.
Or you're saying they don't retain any?
Correct.
Like, so they're losing. So they're falling off the back end.
Yeah. And maybe not even finishing their sessions, because I've seen that before, to where there's a lot of sessions that aren't fully being redeemed.
Yeah. So that would be a problem. What that would tell me is that they're pretty good at getting leads. They're probably really good at converting, leads to clients. I would be a little bit suspicious of what they're promising. And not really suspicious like I'm looking like for trouble, just kind of, maybe they're over promising, under delivering in their consultation or something. And then, once you have the client, it's pretty easy to retain them. What you have to do is make sure, you're explaining the science of it. You have some type of long-term plan or program for them, and you're showing them that. So I'd want to look at their programming at that point. Their demeanor in the session, maybe they're not, maybe they're checked out. Something's definitely going on probably in the session. They're not checking the program, or they're not explaining the science, or not coaching. Maybe they're not paying attention to the client. They're not really like giving them 100% of their time. They're not connecting the dots from like one program to the next. But if they're losing people after 2 sessions or so, then that's probably a huge red flag. I've never really seen that. Mm-hmm. I see more things like they'll sign up for 2 packages and then leave, like clockwork. Mm-hmm. Right. So then that would be more of a like, how are you explaining the program? How are you connecting it long term to their goals? Are you running a long term plan for them, and are they involved in it? Are they engaged in it? Or are you just executing workouts that you make, but they really have no engagement or sort of participation in any of the process?
Yeah, I mean the kind of reason I wanted you to dive in that, because I think a lot of managers just scratch the surface. It's more of a, why aren't you bringing people in, or why isn't? And I like to watch you explain through that, to say, well, maybe it's these underlying factors, And one thing that the reason you were able to do that is because what you said earlier is clarity. And so based on that, I want to ask you one more question about that. Is sure. A lot of the times, like we hear that all the time, right? What's your big 3? What are the things that you need to focus on? And, people try it for a week, and then they're like, it's just not working for me. So I want you to tell them that, was this an easy process to create a new habit at this, or was this something that you had to really work on, personally, to be able to get to the point to where it's like, you trust yourself knowing, okay, I only need to know these 2 points, and I'm still going to be able to get to the next outcome that I wanted in the first place. So was this a hard process for you? Did it take time? Was it something that you had to do to where you did it like day by day, and then one day it really just clicked?
Yeah. So it's actually, it's an ongoing process. It never ends.
Yeah.
Even to this day, like, certain processes of my business, I'll sit down and, get my yellow legal pad out that I always have, with me, and write down things that I want to streamline. And I just, think and say, how can I do this? How can I make this simpler? How can I make this easier? And then I'll write 10 ideas down. Then how can I make that easier? Or, am I thinking about this the right way? What if I did the opposite? Questions like that. Or what if I didn't focus on this at all? It's a constant process of refining, and you got to think to yourself and write it down. And, man, there's stuff right now I'm doing right now that in 6 months, I'm sure I'll have more streamlined for sure.
I love that. Go ahead.
When I got this position at this new gym in Central Jersey that I'm working at, I was already a pretty good programmer, and the two owners on staff are like really good programmers. But since the three of us put our heads together, now we're trying to refine the process because, the owners are husband and wife, so they communicate very easy. And then I'm the third man in. So then all of a sudden, it wasn't so easy, but we keep refining the process. And I was 10 years into personal training at this point. And in the last 2 years, like my programming got even better because, we just keep trying to make it simpler for the client and, beneficial. And we sit down, we have meetings. We're like, okay, what works, what doesn't work. And, you keep doing that forever. It never ends.
And that's why I think some people think, oh, I put the system in, we're good to go. When it's like, someone like you who's very analytical, it's a continual flow. And I think that's a key piece, especially when, when you are a manager, when you're higher up, because people are looking at you. If you are the staple and you are the person that has the reins, they've got to see that you are consistently evolving yourself. That you're not just trying to tell them, hey, you need to sell more, but they're seeing what you're doing as a leader, firsthand, and so the big three, and I'll be honest with you, that's something I still work on to this day too. Sometimes I still overtask myself and there's days where it's hard to pinpoint what are the most important things.
Yeah. That's like, you asked if it was like, something you mastered, or you're never going to master it. You're going to continue to master it over time.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Awesome point. Once again, guys, he said that he stopped thinking of everything being important, but really mastered the big three. And really for him, it was the big two. And so let's move on to the second thing. Once again, it could be business or training. What's the second thing that you stopped doing in order to bring success to your business or to your coaching?
Ooh, so when I train people, what did I stop doing?
Yep.
I think one of the biggest turning points was, back in, and this is related to coaching, back in 2010, like we really got hit hard with the corrective exercise, dogma.
Yeah.
So it's very effective. But of course, when you get excited about something, I think, myself included in the industry, kind of takes some things a little bit too far. And then
that happens now, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went through it years ago.
Yeah.
Where, somebody's got like a crappy squat, right? So then you spend 40 minutes trying to get their squat looking good. And then, the rest of the 20 minutes is like loading it up, and then you stretch them out and then they're done. So that's probably a little bit of a extreme example. It's a little bit exaggerated, but I remember doing like some 20-minute corrective, they call it like the corrective whirlpool, where you just get stuck in the whirlpool going around and around and around.
Yeah.
And I'm an old RKC guy. I did RKC in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And with that curriculum, there was a CKFMS, which was like an advanced FMS course with Gray Cook and Brett Jones and Pavel Satsaline. And I remember Gray Cook saying like, hey, you guys don't have to, like, if they score bad on the FMS, I'm talking about functional movement screen. If they score bad on the FMS, like with the deep squat, you can do two things. You can try and correct them and get them up to a good deep squat, or you can just like remove the deep squat, a loaded deep squat from the program, and get work on everything that they do really well. And he's like, I guarantee you, if you come back around, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months later, because you stop trying to hammer that pattern, it's probably gonna get better on them. It'll get better on its own because you're making everything else around it more stronger, more mobile, more stable.
Mm.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I was like, oh, you mean I can get more work capacity, in the hour if I stop spending, 20, 25 minutes on corrective exercise? Because, you run into some of those clients, man. It's just like, it's like the hammering a square peg into a round hole, like sometimes they just don't move. And you just got to like let it go and remove it. And but the key thing is that you really hammer in what they're really good at, and you exploit that, and you challenge them at that, and you progress on that. And then maybe you do the stuff that they're not so good at in the background, like trying to prepare for it, 1 or 2 stretches here and just building up over time. And that's worked very well for me. I've done a lot of people where I've run an assessment, like an FMS assessment, and, their inline lunge wasn't that great, right? So instead of spending, 15 minutes trying to fix their inline lunge so that they can split squat one day, like, hey, maybe we just don't split squat for 3 months. Like we'll get you strong in other areas. And man, it's amazing what happens to your body when you get stronger. Like you move better and get stronger, like the magic happens. And, all of a sudden I reassessed them, and, the inline lunge is a 2-2, which is passing for, in the world of functional movement screen. And then that's it, like we were working out hard for the last 3 months. I didn't screw around that much.
Yeah. I mean, there was a podcast I was listening to. I don't remember the name right now, but like he was a power lifter, and, he's never gotten hurt. And they're like, how is that possible? And he was just like, I didn't miss, and I didn't do things that hurt, and like, based on what you're saying, like one of the things is I bet that your clients probably enjoyed the workouts a little bit more, instead of just working on the same corrective and then being reminded of how they suck at that movement.
Right.
But then you kind of moved on to something. Oh yeah, I am good at this. And then I love what you said. You strengthen the muscles that'll eventually help that inline lunge. Like that's something I do with my athletes now is I won't back squat really any, and now I do know I'm not blind to the fact that like for football, a college coach would be like, I want you to squat as much as you can.
Right.
But if we get to the point to where the core is built, and all those same musculatures that are going to be used in that squat are built up, and we're able to rotate correctly, things like that, they're going to feel great in that squat. So I loved how you said that about that. And so it's like, now, did you see, because once you learned that from Cook, you probably started slowly implementing that. And so did you see a difference in what clients thought about the session when you went from corrective dominant to, okay, how about we get some work in? Did you see a difference?
Yeah, but let me first talk about how it changed my consultation.
Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Because I've been an FMS guy since about 2009, 2010, and I still am. We still actually run it at pretty much every gym I've ever worked at. In the beginning, when I would run functional movement screen, because I love to help people, right? Like, and I want to make you better. And I thought the way to do that was to first point out, like you said, what they suck at. So the first thing I would address, like, is their low scores, their zeros, their ones, their asymmetries, and I had no idea at the time, because I'm like, oh, in my mind I was like, I can help you out, man. Like I can make you stronger, I can make you move better. But in there, what they were hearing is, you suck at this, you suck at this, you suck at this. So when I do a consult now, and I explain the FMS to them. And a side note, I think it's very important to explain every single screen you're doing. I do see a lot of trainers that will do the FMS and then never give the results, and then the client's not engaged or bought into it, and they're like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah.
Or like, "Why am I?" I hate and love to get the question, "Why am I doing this?" Because or like, "What does this work?" From the client, because I hate it, because it means just I didn't explain things up front. Wasn't proactive about explaining everything. And then I love it because it just makes me a better coach, because I can just explain it to them, but they don't understand. But so then when I flipped it around and started, basically I would go with the things that they did really well at first. I was like, man, you are a rock star here, here, and here. We're going to load this up, these movements up. And then you're great at this. And then, pretty much it would give me feedback about what they said they wanted to work on anyway. So if they said, 9 times out of 10, they say like the core. So they come in like a low scoring, trunk stability push-up, which, measures, a few things, but core stability being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then I would point that out, be like, just like you said, like, you're looking for core stability, and this would be a challenge for you. And now that we know it's there, I know pretty much the exact exercises to prescribe to get you up to speed. But I would make them feel good about the process and get them engaged with it, as opposed to just being like, yeah, here's what's wrong with you. Don't worry, like I can fix you.
Hey, you suck. Now let me help you.
Right.
Do you feel like that doing that? Because I kind of like how you did that. Do you feel like that gives the client a little bit of autonomy to be able to, like, let them know, hey, you do know kind of what your body feels. You do know maybe what you need. I'm just kind of here to help you get to that point, And so it almost, would you say to them, it feels like you're walking beside them, not necessarily walking in front of them like you're superior?
Oh, that's the definition, almost the definition of coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. You nailed it on the head. I mean, the client's 100% an expert on their body. I'm not an expert on their body at all. I can only do assessments and diagnostics and stuff like that to get like a pretty good picture, but they know best. Yeah. And then
Awesome.
you pretty much, you work alongside with them, getting feedback, giving them good things they're good at, giving them things that slightly, just reach up to their sort of edge of ability. Try not to get, I think one of the biggest points of the functional movement screen is it allows you not to give something they're going to fail at right away. So you kind of know what they're going to fail at. So when I was a young coach and, I would start everybody off on the back squat, okay, day 1, PVC pipe, day 2, barbell, and then like things would just break down and I'd have no idea. And I'd throw, 10 cues at them, which is a little bit overwhelming. I'm still not fixing it. All that time, if I just screened them first, and I had an idea, that they couldn't squat and then why they couldn't squat, it just makes the whole thing more seamless and more rewarding for the client.
Absolutely. So yeah, going over that, and I think other coaches need to hear not just that you stopped doing the correctives, but what were the intentions? Especially what you were saying. I mean, I loved when you said, unfortunately I threw like 10 cues at them, and I think even in this day and age, we're very cue happy. It's like if one doesn't work, then we hurry up and go to the next one and then the next one. And it's like, sometimes I know for me personally, like I love following some of the Lee Taft stuff because like for athletes, he'll do fake throws. And sometimes there's nothing better than a physical cue, when the athlete can safely feel kind of the breakdown, then they'll be like, oh yeah. I feel where I should be, and I think sometimes as coaches, we talk too much.
Yeah. And then, and I'm not anti-corrective because, I do like a lot of corrective stuff. I never call corrective exercises from the client because nobody likes to be corrected, right?
So what do you call it?
Exercise. We're gonna do.
So they don't even know. You're just like, hey, we're going to this exercise. And then in your mind, you're like, yeah, we're going to correct this. But in their mind, you're like, oh, it's just another exercise.
Right. We're going to do this exercise because it's going to help you XYZ, what we determined from the screen. And then this is going to turn around and make you a better deadlifter. Yeah.
I like that. That's awesome. All right, my man. Now let's get personal. All right. So what was something that you stopped doing, especially having a 2-year-old? Because like you said, life changes dramatically. What was something that you stopped doing to be able to have a better relationship with your family?
I wish I could say put the Facebook down. I wish I could say that.
Yeah.
Put the phone down. Getting better at that. But, I think as far as like relationships, personal relationship, like with myself, and as far as relationships with other people, I listened to this audio recording by Earl Nightingale. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he wrote this book or had this audio recording called Lead the Field. And it's on Spotify if you have a Spotify account. I think it's also on YouTube. But the first lecture starts with the magic word, and the magic word is attitude. And in that lecture, he says, poor attitude, poor results. Fair attitude, fair results. Good attitude, good results. Great attitude, great results. Right? And I don't know why that resonated with me so much, but when I thought back, like all the years of all the people I knew and, myself when I was the most successful, it was always a good or great attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so, removing any type of poor or fair attitude out of my life, complaining or, you'll never see me complain in public, especially on like, Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Never, ever. Or saying, like I don't like things or, like seeing a movie and it wasn't great, saying like that's a crappy movie, crappy movie or read exercise systems like that exercise system is bad. I always look for the great, the good things out of it. And it's just sort of even how I direct my day. I always come in with a great attitude at work. Anytime I'm doing something with family, I'm always trying to put a great attitude on, even if, maybe I don't like something. But I tell you, man, it's really changed my life, just that mind shift. Because I think it's, there's that quote, like, what's that quote where something like someone said that like life is 90% the way you react to it or something along that lines, which is a pretty good quote. It's a little bit longer than that. But I mean, it's your attitude towards things will change your entire life. It's weird. I attribute a lot of my successes to when I changed my attitude around, even business as well. I mean, I remember, I think I listened to that recording in 2015. I was a personal trainer, or 2014. I was a personal training manager at the time. I can remember the department getting better when I walked into work every single day with a great attitude and like poured that onto my employees. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, have you read, it's funny because I literally just read something about that. Have you ever read Seven Habits of Highly Successful People?
So the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People is the only book I ever recommend when I present to an audience.
Nice. I mean, so I just started reading that, and what you just said, literally, that's been my quest lately too. Because like there was at one point I felt like I caught myself complaining too much.
Yeah.
And that's what he talks about. He's like, you can't, there's things you can't control, but one thing you can control is your response to it.
That's it.
I mean, that hit me. I know. And so when you were talking about that, I really empathize with that because that's the journey I'm going on right now, and you've been doing that longer than I have. And so like just hearing that, it's just good to hear, because how many times, like if you lose a sale, it may not be your fault, but still like it almost throws off the entire day and could throw off your next sale, but instead, like what you're talking about, what if you change your response? And it's the same thing with going home. Like, are you taking your bad day home because your family will feel it? And so no, that hit me. I'm going to probably talk about your top book, so I'm sure you're going to be talking a little bit about that. So I'm not going to say anything else.
All right, so that book completely changed my my management abilities as well. Yeah. So my favorite chapter for that was what is it? First seek to understand, then to be understood. Did you get that far yet?
I'm on that now.
So when you're interacting with employees or really anybody, like even when you're interacting with your clients, if you're coaching, you just don't want to jump down their throat right away, tell them a bunch of stuff. In the employee sense, maybe they're doing something that you don't agree with. So you just don't want to start a meeting by giving them feedback right away, saying like, hey, why are you doing this? Like, this is wrong and stuff like that. You want to get them in and be like, hey, like I noticed you were doing this, walk me through the thought process of why you assigned this exercise this person or, whatever. get their whole picture, because in their mind it might make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it might even make sense in your mind too when they explain themselves. Who knows? But you want to see where they're coming from first, and then you tell them where you're coming from, or you tell them, you remind them of the policies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with the same thing with coaching, say this is such a hot topic right now. Listen, I've been paying attention to, I've been on online bulletin boards. I don't even know if they call them bulletin boards anymore. Since the late 90s with as regard to like fitness. This is probably about the fourth wave of keto that I've seen come through. I don't have any problem with keto, but I just know it's a hot topic right now. So say you have a client that comes in and they're on the keto diet or want to go on the keto diet, but you maybe necessarily don't agree with the keto diet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, instead of jumping down their throat and saying like, oh, that's not the way you want to go, it's not going to help you lose fat, blah, blah, blah. This is you're totally wrong direction. You want to understand why. Like why do they want to do this like, very low carbohydrate diet? It might be because, hey, maybe they got a bad checkup from the doctor and the doctor said, you got to cut the carbohydrates, right? Maybe, maybe they've watched family members go through diabetes and die, from poor eating habits. And to them, they associated that with, processed carbohydrates. I don't know. You got to dig in first before you start to, you want them to understand the science. You want to understand where they're coming from first before you want them to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. I mean, perspective is everything. That's why people say, try to be nice to everybody, because you don't know what that person went through that day. You don't know what their thought process is. And especially in our profession, with you got a million trainers saying, no, this is the right way to train somebody, when, let's be honest, there's a million different ways to get the same result, and it's just like, but how does that person want to get to that result? They may not want to get there through how you do it. Maybe they want to get there through how they do it. And this is why, especially what you were talking about before.
Yeah. And it's your job as the coach to help them. That's kind of funny, because talking about like the early days of the internet, like the late 90s. And there was this one bulletin board where they always had, it was just like a running joke. It was called, there was always like, whenever a new guru came out with like something that has to be done this way. This is like 20 years ago. Yeah. It was called, they always just call it like, oh, this is the one true way, the OTW, one true way.
OTW.
just making a joke of it. That always stuck with me.
That is great. I love that. All right. So I want to hit
20 years ago, I should have paid more attention to, because I fell down quite a bit of rabbit holes myself, in the last 20 years.
Yeah. And who hasn't? Who hasn't, right? I think the rabbit holes are going to be there for our whole life.
Right.
But so one big question, and the big question is kind of what I use from hearing you. And I think this is going to be an important question for really people starting out either in training or in a business. But the question is, from 07 to 09, correct? That's when you started with the training, correct? What was your biggest struggle starting out, and what kind of kept you driving? Because, there's so much turnover in our industry, and it's because after that year or that first 2 years, they might not be where they thought they would be. And, and trainers start dropping off pretty quick because they're not building the book up. So what was your biggest struggle, and what was your thought process to get out of that struggle?
I think there's a couple questions in there. So I think the biggest struggle, I know the biggest struggle is client acquisition, sales. Mm-hmm. So the gym I was at had a very strict, like they would intimidate you into buying, and I had to do that one or two times. And it's 20 years later, or not 20 years, but 10, 12 years later, and I still feel bad about some of these sales I had to make. They literally gave me a book that I read. It was it's called something like Selling Personal Training or How to Sell Personal Training. And I don't want to say the wrong title, because there might be a better book out there. But this was 10, 12 years ago. And in that book, they told you that, if you can get a prospect to say no 11 times, on the 12th time, right? they're like X% more likely to buy than they were the first 11 times.
Yeah.
So we had to get like 11 no's from them. Like that was the policy of the company.
Oh,
Do you know how annoying that is? It's amazing.
11,
I even had any clients at all.
11 no's.
Yeah, 11 no's. A little bit of a strong arm. Some of these people were easily intimidated. So I try to do the best I could. So that was the biggest struggle. Really, selling is just, learning who's in front of you, connecting with them, communicating how you can help them, asking them if this is something that they're interested in, or if they'd like to know how this works, and then you show them, and then you ask for the sale. It's really not that hard. I mean, this stuff's been going on for the last hundreds of thousands of years. You just getting the confidence. You have to. You said before, like, say if you don't close a sale and then you have like a really bad day after that because you're feeling kind of crappy, which is very understandable. However, when you've been doing this 10, 12 years, this is a numbers game, right? When I was in a corporate environment, I know 5 out of 10 sales I wasn't going to close. I just knew. So if I didn't close it, that would be, okay, great. I'll keep in touch. We'll follow up and, that's it. Now that I'm in a smaller boutique, we have much higher closing ratio, more like 90 to 100%. But we know we're going to let one slip through the cracks every once in a while. The longer you do this, just the more it's like kind of unfazed. I like to compare it to, you ever watch those like World Poker Championship games on like ESPN?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those guys, that's all, like those guys have played a gazillion hands, right? They have so much experience that you don't know if they have an awesome, like 4 of a kind, or if they have, like a pair of twos, because they've seen so many 4 of a kinds and they've seen so many pair of twos that it's the same. It's almost the same response. They're just given, so if you're starting out, it could seem, pretty discouraging. But I'm telling you, that's just the way it is. And then as you just do it more and get more comfortable and confident with it, those numbers will slowly start to increase. If you're a corporate personal trainer, expect to lose 5 to 7 out of 10 consults. 30% closing ratio for a corporate trainer is great.
Once again, it's all about perspective, right? And
Yeah.
Now, what was the, especially with you getting to the point now, what was the thing that helped you to push past that? Because like people get to your point, of hey, get the 11 no's, maybe not that dramatic, but they get to that point and they're like, I'm done. Like what kind of kept you in the game to want to get better?
I knew this is I don't want to sound like an a-hole, but I knew I was better than most people in the gym. And that was because I spent a lot of time practicing my craft, right? Lifting weights. And then 2, reading and educating myself. So this is, 2007, 2008. This is a long time ago in the PT world, man. It was like the Wild West back then. Continuing education was like just became a word for personal trainers. So, but I was on that like right away. I would buy every book I could. I have, in early 2000s, I think I bought every single book from ironmind.com. I had most of Dragon Door's library, like as they were pumping them out since 1999. Like I would buy DVDs. I would train with friends. I would just try and get as much experience as possible. And then when I really became so this was like even before I was a personal trainer. And then when I became a personal trainer and started actually making some good money, I would spend a lot of money on continuing ed, like traveling, continuing education. I mentioned before, like I became an RKC. Like that wasn't cheap, man. That was like, $1,500, I think, for a 3-day weekend back in 2009. And same thing with that CKFMS thing. I did that 3 times, CKFMS. That's how much I loved Ray Cook and Brett Jones from the functional movement screens or functional movement systems. Yeah, I knew that as I got better, I knew I could help more people in a more effective and efficient manner. I just always knew that.
I don't know, it sounds like honestly that you held yourself responsible. A lot of the times when people want to quit, they kind of blame, people don't want to buy, the market isn't there, and what did you do? You kind of knew that you were going to blossom because you could look at yourself in the face and be like, have I done everything that I could do in order to get better?
Yeah.
And I think that's where people go wrong is they forget to look at what is their responsibility. What are they doing to ensure that maybe I'm going to grow in sales, or maybe I can get better at my training, maybe I can get better at my craft. I mean, how many times have you heard trainers, and you don't even have to hear them, but they just think that all of a sudden build it and they'll come, which unfortunately is not it. You got to build yourself, build your mind, build everything else. But, just hearing you talk, it just sounded like you kept yourself responsible. You held yourself accountable to, it's like, I mean, if I don't get people, this is why, bang, bang, bang. It's not their fault. It's because maybe I didn't study up on this enough, and that's what you did from day one.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, accountability. So in 2008 and 2007, 2008, I worked at two different gyms, and I was the only guy that did assessments, right? So you can already tell that I'm like researching this stuff online, reading books. I think I read Athletic Body and Balance at that point. So I was doing that assessment before I did the functional movement screen. A couple of cardiovascular assessments that, you learn out of your NSCA textbook. I was the only guy tracking my clients' workouts, the only one at two gyms,
Wow.
only guy that wrote that stuff down. And it was just like a 3-ring binder where I hand wrote. This is like before, tablets and stuff, and like laptops. I hand wrote in like, okay, squat, SQ, 155 pounds, 3 sets, 10, 10, 9, every single time. I was the only guy that was reading books on the subject. I hope it's a lot different now. I mean, that's why I went to Equinox. When I went to Equinox, that was like the norm pretty much. That was like average when I got there. That's why I stayed there for 8 years. But yeah, I held myself accountable for those things, and I just knew that would lead to being a better trainer and just getting better results for these people. I knew I could do a better job than. That's why I became a manager. I knew I could do a better job than some other managers. Like I knew I
No,
would spend more time on it.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I hope people take from that, hey, grow yourself every day. It doesn't just stop. Even if you get a master's, it definitely doesn't stop. I was talking to someone the other day. Eric Mitchell, and it's like, okay, great, you have a master's, but do you have a master's in life? Are you continually getting better? And so, but that's a huge point right there. So next thing, just quickly, and you can talk about the book that we already talked about. I have no problem with that. But what is one book that really influenced you and made an impact on you, maybe as a manager? And it can be the book that we discussed, but what were some of the bullet points that really helped you out from this book that you read that made a big impact for you?
So I've read like a ton of books on this stuff. I would still say 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Person.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things really stand out, and that's they have that whole. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the chapter, but it's Put First Things First, I believe is the name of the chapter. And then they have this whole like quadrant thing of sort of like, important things, immediate things, not important things that can wait. And then you write out like all your daily tasks in this quadrant. Did you get that far yet?
I have not, but I know the quadrant you're talking about, actually.
Yeah. So then that's like probably where I really started to hone in, like, like I got all these things I got to worry about, but I only have to focus on a couple things. And if I focus on these 2 or 3 things, then it'll spiral out and take care of all these other things. And then, at that point was the first time I really started scheduling out high priority tasks. Like every Sunday, I would, sit down, plan out my week, and schedule in those, like, 1, 2, 3 big things, those super high priority things. And if you sit down and do, 3 of, like, either like either trying to generate more revenue, or try and escalate the abilities of your employees, if you focus on that, the magic really does happen.
Mhm.
If you focus on the menial small stuff, like answering emails quickly, looking into metrics that don't really mean a lot, or not making meaningful connections or relations with your staff or your members, that's all that stuff's just time wasting. That was probably the first thing that where I really started to hone in the calendar. That
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 could that could literally be a whole nother podcast
yeah.
there.
So, are you a member of our Facebook group, the Personal
Yeah.
Training Business Lab?
Yep.
So, basically, over years, I have a productivity worksheet that I pretty much developed over a couple of years that you can download in the files section. It's kind of what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out because I remember you talking about it even at the other thing. Because right now I got the old, what is it, Michael Hyatt's. Yeah, it's his productivity thing. But
Oh,
I'll have to download that because it is so important what you're talking about. Being able to hone down and create clarity. I think that's where people really go off track, is not being clear on their direction, and where they do and try to answer emails quickly, try to do this quickly, and then all of a
we get,
sudden 3 hours is wasted.
yeah, we get stuck in that loop, and you got to pull yourself out, like, every week. Pull yourself out, because it's a strong gravitational force, man.
Yeah, yeah. All right, my man. Well, I want to respect your time. Really appreciate you coming on. So let's hear just some of the things that how people can reach out to you, and maybe talk about your and John's business a little bit.
Oh yeah, so John and I run the Lab Fitness Consultants, and Lab stands for Leadership, Accountability, and Business. And pretty much right now we're kind of settling in on a niche of helping out trainers that are sort of brand new, like first 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years. They're trying to figure everything out. They have no sales system, no programming system. They have no lead generating system. You remember when it was your first year, when it was you kind of you had to do 1,000 tasks as a personal trainer. It just wasn't a clear and cut job.
Yeah.
You're everything. You're a salesman. You're a marketing guy. You are your own administrative assistant. You're also a scientist. You got to keep up on the latest science, but you're also an artist. You're working with people, and people are, they can be a different person from one day to the next. And then you're also this quasi, behavior. I don't want to say therapist, because that's overstepping your scope. But you're like, you're trying to, you know what I mean? You're trying to get these habits going, and you're trying to teach them these skills. And so, yeah, it's a lot. So, John and I combined have been doing this for like 25 years, just the two of us. So we do like phone consultations. If you're close, we'll have you visit, or we'll stop by your gym. We also have a Facebook group called, if you just type in Facebook and go to Personal Training Business Lab, L.A.B, we should be the first group to pop up. We answer a lot of questions there. We put a lot of content on there too. And we have an event coming up on May 11th, Saturday. It's 4 speakers, and it's basically, we like to keep it on personal training business. So you have John and I doing a presentation. You have Casey Lee, who is a trainer, business owner up in Vermont, and then you have Mark, who is a regional manager for a few gyms locally. So it's just all about how to, business and culture, and John and I are doing on sales, like finding your weakest link in the sales and how to improve it. And here's some strategies. It's $100. I think it's $99. Pretty cheap for a day.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
It's at John's Gym in Shrub Oak, New York. It's called Team Mojo. Our website's labfitconsultants.com, Labfit Consultants. You can go there and buy tickets. You can contact me, Neal Snyder. I'm Neal Snyder. I'm the first guy that pops up on Facebook, Twitter, probably Instagram, as I spell my name weird, not like Neil Armstrong. My handle is always Real Neal Snyder. So you remember Real, Real, Neal, Real Neal.
That's legit. That is legit.
And then I'm neal.snyder@gmail.com.
Awesome, man. Well, I truly appreciate your time today and really kind of you giving your wisdom to people that I think really is going to help them and grow them in a big way. So I really appreciate just all that you do and you coming on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, man. I appreciate it. And this has been really cool. I could talk about this stuff for days and days and days. So maybe if you get a good response, you can invite me back, a couple months later. If
Yeah. Would it be weird to have like a two-day podcast, just straight 48 hours of just talking?
Yeah, for the low price of $4.99, the Inner Circle 2-day podcast.
That's great. That's great. All right, my man. I appreciate you.
All right, you too, Andrew.